Good morning still. It's just before noon, so good morning still. This music makes me feel like a rock star. I don't feel that way, but we'll see. So good morning, we're here, Daniel and I, to talk about ALM more, like the practical side of ALM, because ALM is an integral part of building applications in any platform, but also on Power Platform, even though lots of people are saying it's difficult to do ALM on Power Platform. It's not easy, but certain things have changed in the recent months that make it better, because it would improve your apps in speed, reliability, and user experience. So I truly believe if you're not doing the tool part of ALM yet, it's something to invest in soon, because this way multiple developers both code first and citizen developers can work together and jointly contribute to building an application, which is something that hasn't been super easy in the first years of Power Platform with Power Automate and Canvas apps, and people that have no real training in building software to work together and build proper stable applications, but Microsoft is making lots of investments. And if we look at that, we start with version 1 of application lifecycle management in Power Platform, where it's all manual. And it worked for smaller teams and smaller projects. It did work for citizen developers, like exporting the solution and then importing it in the new environment and all of that, but you know, that's a pain. It's simple and useful, but you have no follow-up on the versioning, on which version is where. Is it actually the version that's in the target environment? Because when you export manually, who decides what version a solution has? It's the one that does the next finish and just changes the solution version. So you have no certainty there. Then we got version 2 of ALM in Power Platform. This is the evolution where people are starting to build tooling around it, where they have Pack CLI that's coming from Microsoft, where there's ALM Accelerator doing things, where people are sharing in the community their DevOps pipelines and things like that. But it's still, it's the other side of things. It's much more difficult to do. It requires usually pro devs to get it set up in Azure DevOps or in GitHub. It's usually only done for the more complex applications. We try to do this one for every application, but it's a bit of an overhead. But in the future it pays off. Like, you know, when clients come back after 6 months and want to redeploy the application or want changes, it's great that you have the pipeline in place. Okay? And now we're at version 3, which Microsoft calls the native support of things, so that it's for everyone. Little side note, it's currently very useful for the citizen developers. There are certain things that have to be improved if you want to combine it with pro development, things like Dataverse plugins and things like that, but it's moving in the right direction. It makes it much easier to set up ALM, source code integration or pipelines, right out of the box of your application, of your Power Platform environment, essentially. We're waiting for pictures to be taken, and then we switch to the next slide, hopefully.
Well, let me hook into this one, because I think that before native, it was more of a really pipelines kind of party.
Yeah.
Less about the inner loop, where you are actually developing a solution and making it, like from start to when you want to deploy it. And we can see that move as well, right?
Yeah, exactly, because the whole source control part of Power Platform was even harder than the actual deployment part of Power Platform, you know. And we see that if we talk about ALM or the source control part and the deployment part for pro developers or version 2 of things, it was a bit of a do-it-yourself kind of situation, and you had to combine Pack CLI with Azure DevOps or Git and a lot of YAML files that you had to write to make sure that it works, which started with an environment, the development environment, where makers are extending the application, where they are building their stuff, and then Pack CLI should be used to pull all or some components into your source control, and it would be like split out in different parts. All YAML, or well, not all YAML, was a combination of XML and YAML and JavaScript and other types of files.
PowerShell.
PowerShell. It's like all mixed in there, which then would lead to your source control system. Now, if you wanted to work on this, you had to pull it back again into your dev environment if people made changes. It's once again a pipeline you had to create in DevOps with YAML and all of that. Or you had to push it to a test or a production environment, another pipeline to build the controls or the solution package again and then get it into the test or production environment. It's a lot of things that you have to invest in upfront and you can most likely reuse for all your projects, but it's not a super easy way of getting it done. Luckily, Microsoft has been making changes in the last year, I think, updates, new features, bringing us to the native source control integration, the native Git integration right out of the box of Power Platform. Who has tried this one already? Well, there are a couple people. I'm trying to be optimistic about this one. I'd like to hear your real-world experience with it afterwards. Because this thing, I believe in it. It moves in the right direction. It's not fully there yet. But native source code integration is an easy setup. It's an immediate connect in seconds. You don't need any tools. It's just in the platform. It's an almost next finish setup. It allows you to do fusion development with every one of your makers across multiple environments working on your source code, pushing it back to source control, pulling it back in, all your changes. So all of that is very easy from the UI to be done. It's a simple Git integration. Don't expect out of the box branching and merging strategies. You still have to figure that out yourself in the DevOps side of things. And it works safely with branches if you have that set up on your DevOps environment. You can even take it one step further and work with branches that are connected to separate environments, and then you can do PR gates and validated testing and stuff like that. With that, I want to show a live demo, which is always a risk with this solution. So they switched to my computer again. So if you go to Power Platform and you go to your maker your make.powerapps.com, you will see that there's now a new connect to Git button over here, and it will tell you for every one of your solutions if it's connected to Git, yes or no. So the first thing you will want to do is connect to Git. To connect to Git, you have to make a decision up front, which you will not be able to change afterwards. So you better know what it means. You have to pick a connection type, being environment or solution. And the fun part is that it doesn't tell you at that point, so you'll have to read up. If you do a connection type of environment, it means that every solution in your environment is by default connected to source control. You still are responsible to push for every solution separately, but by default, every solution can go into source control, and there's a predefined structure for that. If you do solution, you can guess. You have to go in for each of those solutions and say, this is the one that needs to be connected to Git, to source control, and it will go in this folder in my repository. Okay? The two side remarks on that, you can read it here, hopefully. But as soon as you want to do native Git integration, you will turn your environment into a managed environment. So if you want to use this feature, it has to be a managed environment. It's easy and cheap when the environment is a development environment, because you can make them be a managed environment. It makes life maybe some bit more complicated as soon as you move to a sandbox or production. Now, the second thing you need is an Azure DevOps organization, because it currently only supports Azure DevOps. You need an Azure DevOps organization in the same tenant that you're developing. For many SIs and ISVs, not so great either. There is no GitHub support. As soon as you select your organization, you have to have a project, you select a repository. I do environment binding. So you select a branch, excuse me, where it goes, and you have to put in a folder. I usually put source. So that's that. You click connect, it's connected to Power Platform. I'm not going to click connect because I want to reuse this environment for a next demo. So we will switch to an environment that is connected. As soon as it's connected, you will see that the solutions are showing up as connected to Git. Now it's a bit of a, it's not fully true what it shows there, because this environment is connected on an environment basis, but only the clean ingredient check and the ID management solution are actually pushed into source control. This one can be pushed if I want to. Okay? You can validate the connection by clicking Git connection, and it shows all that information. If we switch to Azure DevOps side of things, the way that data is stored in Azure DevOps is different depending on which connection type you choose. If you look at environment binding, I picked source. You will see that my two solutions are in here. Okay? So you can see that in here. Both solutions are in here. And you will see that within the source folder, every component type that exists in either of those two solutions will be put in the corresponding folder. Meaning that if both solutions have entities, or tables for the people that are in this platform a bit longer than, well, no, it's tables now. See? All those will go into the folder called entities. And these ones, C and Y, are from our one solution, and YR underscore are from a different publisher, it's my different solution. But both will be in the same folder. Meaning that the contents of each solution will be put together into one pile of things in Azure DevOps. Now, if you would switch to solution binding, it gives a bit of a, in my opinion, more clean structure, but Microsoft prefers environment binding, so that's their preference. I like the clean structure of starting in source and having my solutions separately, and you see, this solution doesn't have much, it has the entity. This is what's in the other solution. All of this information, for everyone that has ever done a pack solution unpack, knows that everything is an XML file. Now, with the native source control integration, everything is now a YAML file. So it's a new source format. According to Microsoft, this merges easier, and it's easier for people to view the differences between the component types. I don't know. It's an opinion, I guess. YAML works, it's in here. The downside of the YAML thing is that it doesn't work out of the box with pack CLI at this point. So you have your sources in source control, but it's difficult to make it back into a solution from the source control files. So if you need the old solution, you have to go back to the environment, export it, and then you get the zip file with the old XMLs in there. If only build was going on at the moment, then maybe there is an announcement regarding that soon. We'll see. So if we switch back to environment, because I want to show one more thing that makes it easy. So if we go to ID management in one environment, you will see that there is the Git integration in here. So it's in your, I'm going to open it. So there's source control in here. So if we go into an object, and we go into a table, and I'm doing the stupidest rename demo ever, because it's fast to do that, because we rename a field from inventor to submitter, because it's not because you submit an event, an ID, that you're the inventor of an event, of an ID. So we're saving it. Hopefully it goes a bit faster. Maybe? No? Yes? No? Saving? Well, that's a disappointment. Anyways, there we go. So if you go to the source control page, it will show you the changes that are made in that solution. So it shows me that I updated that display name of this field. The thing I hope they improve soon is show me what the actual change was. So they show me that something has changed on this field, that the display name has changed on this field, but not what it changed into. This is when you go to commit, you say change display name. I can't type live, but I don't care. So we submit, and it goes into Azure DevOps like this, and we would switch to environment binding, and we will see that in the history that my typo has made it into the git commit history. So all of those changes are in there. Now if we switch to an environment that's connected, that's not this one, that is connected to the same repository, and we go into ID management again, and we go into source control, we can now check for updates, which it will fetch from Git, source control. You will see the update in here, and you can pull it in. It has some rudimentary conflict management where you see if there are conflicts between two, like the local data and the one coming from the repository, where you can decide whether or not the local one wins or the remote one wins, and then pull it in. So this was the easy one. There's no conflicts in there. It takes a bit, but you will see, hopefully, well, I'm not going to show you, you'll have to accept it, that the field has been renamed in this environment as well. Okay? And with that, I think it's time to switch to the slides. Thank you. Because build is going on, these are, if you like this thing with source control and native Git, and you like what Daniel is talking about with deployment pipelines in a minute, then these are the 3 sessions that you should watch at build. The first one is going on at the moment, while we're presenting here, and the 2 others are today and tomorrow, this evening and tomorrow. They will have more announcements, supposedly, regarding this feature set. And with that, I hand it over to Daniel Leskowitz.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the outer loop in this case, because Yannick was just talking about the inner loop. He was talking about how to do source control, make sure that everything, when you're working on a project or a solution, you can push and pull the changes into source control. I'm going to talk about the outer loop, so I'm going to talk about the pipelines part, where you already have a solution, for instance, and then you will push it to test, QA, production, etc. And we have shown you this image before. Antti showed it during his presentation. And this is like the ideal scenario. So ideally it looks like this. But usually when we are doing these projects, it more looks like this. And this might look a little bit strange, but there is a lot of trial and error during ALM. You will hit a bunch of things that will go wrong. So you will sometimes hit missing dependencies. I think most people already know about that, for instance. But there can be a lot of things that go wrong, even not just on the technical side, but sometimes also on the people side. So those kinds of things are really important to also realize, that while we showed also the inner loop and outer loop, and it looked really clean, it not always looks like that when you are actually practicing it. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the pipeline options that we have. You can build your own, of course. So what Yannick was talking about, you can create your own ALM. So you can create your own pipelines. You can use Azure DevOps. You can use GitHub Actions for that, for instance. You can use the PAC CLI, Power Platform CLI for that. And that is something where you have complete freedom over what you're doing. There is no big structure like with the pipelines for Power Platform, for instance, because those are more like structured way of doing it, and you have limited configuration options. But with Build Your Own, you have complete flexibility, basically. Then we have another option, but that's more of a pro dev setup that you need to do, and that's the ALM Accelerator. And the ALM Accelerator is like a toolkit that was made by Microsoft, by a part of Microsoft, where they made it easier for companies to work with ALM. It was a way that they provided a whole bunch of pipelines already, so you could just install that on your Power Platform environment, and then you could go and work on your pipelines there. It also had an app, which is really cool. I'll show you that in a bit as well. But it had an app, a Power App, basically inside of the Power Platform environment. So it was semi in Power Platform. It was not fully custom built outside of the Power Platform, but it also had a Power Platform part in there. And lastly, we have pipelines for Power Platform, which is the in-product experience. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But first, let's talk a little bit about the ALM Accelerator. And what you can see here on the slide is that you can have on the left your maker team, where they have all kinds of environments. They will push their changes to the ALM environment. And that's the Power App that you have. So what you can do there is you can basically pull in all the changes that you did, etc. And then from there on, you can then deploy it to other environments. So that's basically a rudimentary view of the ALM Accelerator. Next, we have the pipelines in Power Platform, and this is really Microsoft's way of saying we want to do ALM in a good way inside of the Power Platform as well. And as Yannick said, it's not fully taking all the scenarios that we want to, but we are trying to get everything on board there. But for now, it's a great start at least. It's really to democratize ALM, so makers can also do pipeline triggering and that kind of stuff. That used to be something that was more on the pro dev side, of course, and now we have an in-product way to, say, deploy to QA or deploy to test or production, and we can do that from the Power Platform. It's really easy to install. You can install an app and it will install all the solutions that you need for it. It's just a couple of clicks. And you can also extend it. And it's a little bit more limited than the free-for-all Azure DevOps and GitHub pipelines for GitHub Actions. But you can still do a lot of extensions. So you can create, for instance, approvals. That's a really important one, of course, because you don't want people to deploy to production without going through the necessary checks. So you want to maybe have an approval for someone. Yes, it's okay to go to production, for instance. So those kinds of things, you can build those. You can also build, for instance, extensions for testing in there. And I'll come back to that a little bit later as well. But there is a lot of possibilities on that side as well. Next, we also have delegated deployments, because you don't want to deploy everything under user credentials, for instance, because then you would have maybe trouble later on where you would hit some problems with, for instance, the permissions that they have, for instance. So that's basically where you can do delegated deployments. It also has a really cool feature, and that's the AI feature that we have, and that's deployment notes. So normally everybody hates writing the notes on what is in the solution, what is in the update. It's always a bit of a hideous task. With this feature, when you want to deploy it to the next environment, you can hit a button and it will deploy. It will show all the deployment notes, so it will show all the changes that have been done, everything that has been added, and then it will just show you an example of what is all in there. And then you can you can still have a human in the loop who can kind of change it to better language or something, because AI generated language is not always the best. So you might want to change that as well. And it's really cool to also see the admin part of it. So you can have a lot of data inside of the pipelines, because every time you, for instance, push to a next environment, it will automatically save as a backup the solution that you want to deploy. So that's also really good with rollbacks, etc. Next, sharing during deployment. That's also a really important one, because a lot of people that work with ALM have had situations where they would deploy something to production or something and they haven't shared it with the right people. So people don't have access, they get access denied kind of messages and that kind of stuff. That's what you can do immediately during the process of deploying it to a next stage. So when you want to deploy it to production, you can add the roles to everybody, and you can make sure the right groups have access to the right parts of your solutions. The deployment notes, I already talked a little bit about that. It's really cool to kind of generate those deployment notes and also have a chance to kind of fine-tune them before you save them and put them into the system. You can also extend the pipelines. That's the part that I talked about in the beginning as well. So you can do some validations if you want to before you export it. Make sure that it's using the right naming conventions, for instance. Those kinds of things you can check that. You can do a whole bunch of business logic, run it on the pipelines as well. You can, of course, use the service principles. That's also part of the extending. And you can also do the approvals if you want to. So if you want to have the approval before production, you can do that as well. Or maybe you have a process where you need to create a ticket inside of ServiceNow, and you need to make sure that everything is logged in that system as well. That's what you can do with those extensions. Then this is really an important question, when to use what, because a lot of people always struggle with that question. So we basically have a couple of options. We have pipelines, ALM accelerator, and DevOps or GitHub. If you look at the pipelines, it's mostly for a low-code way of doing ALM. As Yannick also said, some of the more pro-dev experiences are not there yet, but we are definitely working on it. It has full Microsoft support, so that's a good thing. It is citizen dev friendly, so makers can use it as well. The big pro is, of course, that it's in product. So when you are in your solution, you can go to pipelines and click on deploy, and it will deploy your solution. So that's a really easy case of doing ALM. For ALM Accelerator, you do a lot more setup in the upfront at least, and it's more for pro devs to set up that solution at least. The big difference is also that it's not fully in product, so it's not out of the box in product, but you need to use the app and configure that app to make it inside of the product basically. And it is supported through GitHub issues, so they have a GitHub repository where you can add an issue if you have a problem with it, but it's less of a support than if you go to pipelines, for instance. And lastly, we have DevOps or GitHub, and that's where you basically have to set up your pipelines completely yourself. There are no pipelines that you can use like the ALM Accelerator. It already has a bunch of sample pipelines that you can use or templates that you can use. In DevOps or GitHub, it's a lot more do-it-yourself, basically. It is not available in product, so that's also a big difference. But the DevOps and GitHub tasks or actions that you can use, they are supported by Microsoft, and you can also file GitHub issues if you want that for that as well. Lastly, I want to talk about testing, because that's also part of the outer loop. And we have a feature called Test Engine. I don't know how many of you already use that. Not a lot. So Test Engine is a really nice tool where you can test all the parts of your solution, basically. You have ways to use natural language and generative AI, for instance, to create the tests. So that's a really nice one, because nobody likes writing the test himself, or at least I don't know a lot of people that like them. But it can generate more work it can basically generate a whole bunch of stuff for you so that you don't have to do that work. You can also use the multiple Power Platform components. You can test them all inside of the test engine. You can use PowerFX also together, the low-code formula language that you have. You can also use Playwright inside of Test Engine because it uses that. And Playwright is a tool that a lot of people use for testing pro-dev solutions as well. And lastly, it will have the ALM integration because you can also use it together with pipelines. And that is really cool about the Test Engine. So with that, let's move into the last part, I think.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is my mic back on? Yeah. So awesome. So what's next? So as you can see, Microsoft Power Platform with all their applications, they are more powerful together with no-code, low-code, and pro-code. Nice slide from Microsoft, right? But I agree with that. The fact that with these features, we're bringing back, we're closing the gap between no-code and low-code. Is there any project ever just no-code? And then no-code, low-code, and the pro-code developers, we're bringing them closer together. Yes, we know there are still certain gaps between things like native Git integration and pipelines, but you see the investment for those that have been in the platform for a long time. For years, like 7 to 10 years, nothing happened with code-first plugins. We got managed identities now. Things are moving towards helping, building better solutions, which means, for me, in my opinion, the future is bright for developers on Power Platform, so that in the future our solutions will be more stable, more secure, more sustainable, and more modern. And I truly believe that these features that are currently rolling out, and they're still young, I get that, but when they mature, that it will help us switch to supported ways of doing ALM in the platform. With that, we'll leave you with a QR code where we have put together some resources. Daniel just did it like half an hour ago, so I hope it works.
It works. I tested it.
And you can find the ALM documentation. I'm very happy that we got at least one typo in the slides.
Oh.
So we made that too. So with that, thank you very much.